every so often you have to speak truth to anarchy. And that's what I'm going to do. When I was in seventh grade, I was in civics class, and I learned for the very first time in the seventh grade about the governor of Arkansas, who said that he was not going to yield to the power of the autocracy in Washington, D.C., and relinquish the authority that he had over the school system of Little Rock, Arkansas. In fact, he closed one high school for an entire year because the Supreme Court had ruled that segregation was unconstitutional and the Little Rock, Arkansas school system should be integrated. And he closed one high school for an entire year. Well, the next year came around and he was determined to keep this from happening again, at the school being closed, but he would open the school, but he would ensure the fact that these children of color would not be permitted into these white schools. And so he called out the National Guard to ensure that it was 6 kids, 6 black kids were not able to attend this white school in their neighborhood. And he said, the federal government's not going to come down here and tell us how we ought to be running our school system. And he said, we're not going to have it. And he called out the National Guard to keep these 6 kids of color out of these all-white schools. Well, the next day, listen to this now, and a lot of people don't realize this, Dwight Eisenhower, who was the president, said this is a country that is ruled and governed by the rule of law, even in Arkansas. And that if we have to, we're going to make this happen. And he turned the National Guard into federal troops. That's not all he did. He called in the 101st Airborne, the Army, if you will, to ensure that the Arkansas National Guard got the message that they were now working for the federal government. And you probably know the rest of that story. There was one little black child that day who made it into this all-white high school, and 3 or 4 years later, it was completely integrated. But it started with the National Guard being federalized, and then the 101st Airborne being called in to ensure the fact that the National Guard was going to do what Dwight Eisenhower, who was the president, said. So the school system was integrated. Even though the people of Little Rock said, we're not going to have this, they can't do this, this is the very thing that states are supposed to do, Dwight Eisenhower said, this is a country of the rule of law. In the last 4 years, we've had 16,347,000 illegal immigrants come into our country. Most of them are wonderful and incredible people. Most of them are. And I know them, you know them. They run the restaurants, they own the restaurants, they landscape our yard, they're incredible people. And this is not about the fact that they're bad people. It's about the fact that we are a country of the rule of law. In fact, that 16,347,000 who came here came because of the rule of law. See, they came here for that reason. You see, if they had started, let's say, a Mexican restaurant in their own country, eventually some mafia guy would come along and say, you got to start paying me protection. Or it's a country where either mafia, the meanest, the baddest, or the rich people make the law. That's not how it is here. And so that's why people come here. That's why they're successful. You see, it isn't that they become geniuses at restaurants, at landscaping, at construction, at all of these kind of things just because they're here. They could do that in their country if they had the rule of law, but they don't. So you see, the very thing that brings them here is the very reason they have to go home. Yes, all 16 million of them have to go home because this is a country of the rule of law. And you see, not some governor in Illinois gets to decide, you see, what laws he's going to obey or not. So, not some mayor in Chicago or in Portland, Oregon, or Los Angeles, or in New York, or in Boston, or in Long Island. They don't get to decide as to which of those rules of law they obey. Or, you know what? School systems would still be segregated. And sometimes the President of the United States has to call in the National Guard. And if the National Guard won't listen, he may have to call in the 101st Airborne. That's how committed we are as a nation to the rule of law. It's what brings people here. It's what keeps us here. You see, it's what keeps things like cartels from making the law. It's what keeps things like the richest people in the country from making the law, because you know as well as I know that's how it is in most of the world.